Now, so last couple of classes, we went back, so to speak. I talked to you a little bit about Kabbalah, and I told you a lot of what's written in the Sefer HaZechreinis about the Yosef Yusfa and the Belyo Baal Shem and so forth. And I brought out the point that in Chassidus, the Baal Shem Tov for sure, they follow the Arizal's Kabbalah as opposed to the Pardes' Kabbalah in many respects, including the respect of Kabbalah Maisis. And what I find interesting is that our Rabbeim, the Siyah Chabad, when asked about Kabbalah Maisis, used to say Chas v'Sholem. In other words, they were followers of the Baal Shem Tov, but they did not follow everything. The idea of Kabbalah Maisis, they did not continue. And the Hezber, Bepashtus, is not because Chas v'Sholem they disagreed with the Baal Shem Tov, but that the Shita is, in order to do Kabbalah Maisis, you have to be on an unbelievably high Madrege of Emunah, because otherwise it could lead to Avodah Zarah. You know, the Gemara says that Chizkiah gone of Sefer HaRefuos. Shlomo Melech had a Sefer HaRefuos. The Rambam speaks about it. Shlomo Melech had a Sefer HaRefuos, a book of medicines. And Chizkiah buried it. And the Gemara, it's a Mishnah, the Gemara Masechet Pesachim, or it's a Gemara Masechet B'Raisa, that Das Chachamim Neicha, the Chachamim were happy about it. You know, you have the Mishnah about 3 things that they did that the Chachamim were happy, 3 things that the Chachamim were not happy. It was good that he buried Sefer HaRefuos. Why? So there's different explanations. One explanation that's brought is that the refuahs of David HaMelech, of Shlomo HaMelech, were so secure, nobody has ever had any fear. You took his remedy and you were for sure cured, so there was no fear. And fear is very, very important for Emunah. But noch Pshat is, Shlomo HaMelech Sefer HaRefuah is based on Kabbalah Maisis. And if you're not edel enough and you use Kabbalah Maisis, you start worshipping things other than Achdas Hashem. And this has to be very, very edel. So when Chizkiyahu HaMelech saw that it was being abused, he got rid of the Sefer HaRefuos. And this perhaps is the explanation why the Baal Shem Tov himself was a practitioner of Kabbalah Maisis. And our Rabbeim, Ipnei Anivus Mistameh, felt that they're not the Royal Adava, but they did, bottom line, they didn't pass Kabbalah Maisis. The next thing on the agenda to do is an overview. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because this is not a shiur. It's supposed to be Sipurim. But Patav L'Klumi Yefsher, I have to do this. At least a little bit of what Chassidus is. It's one of the most interesting things in the world. You'll ask the average person, you'll ask the average Chassid, what is Chassidus? And they mamish don't have an answer. It's one of those weird things about Chassidus. Like the Rebbe says in the Sichos, it's like Shemen. Shemen is mefapeh b'kulei, oil penetrates everywhere, and at the same time it's tzaf al gabi kol mashkim. It doesn't mix with anything. Everybody knows what Chassidus is, and yet there's no idea what it is. We see the effect of Chassidus, but if you had to pin down Chassidus Mao, the question has been asked for 250 years, and it's still being asked. So what is Chassidus? Now naturally, everything that's meaningful and valuable and true is complex. You know, there's nothing that's simple in this world. But the Frierdiker Rebbe in his Sichos says a statement, and that you could summarize the whole Chassidus in one phrase, one statement. And that statement is, Elokus is out and out is Elokus. Godliness is everything and everything is godliness. Now the Frierdiker Rebbe says, what's the difference between godliness and everything is godliness? It's 2 in Yonim, but that's not negate to us. Godliness is everything is Chassidus in a nutshell. Now when you say that statement, it does not sound like a big deal. Okay, godliness, everything sounds, you know, it's good bumper sticker material, you know. Okay, godliness is everything. But if you break it down, if you analyze the statement, godliness is everything, you discover that it's not simple at all. Godliness is everything is gor weit von a poshte Zach. In Tanya chapter 29, Tanya Perich Tes, the Alter Rebbe talks about the Yetzer Hara. But he talks about the Yetzer Hara in the Chassidic context, in the context of godliness is everything and everything is godliness. So the Alter Rebbe says, what is the Yetzer Hara? The Yetzer Hara is a war against darkness. What is darkness? Darkness is nothing. Darkness is simply the absence of light. Which is why light and darkness have never ever had a fight, except in Mitzrayim. Because that was V'yomesh Cheshech. As soon as you bring in light, the darkness disappears. The Yetzer Hara, the Yetzer Teva, light and darkness. Now, ask the average person whose Yetzer Hara is giving him a miserable time. So does the Yetzer Hara feel like darkness and Heder Ha'ed? It'll tell you, excuse me, maybe my neshama is darkness, Heder Ha'ed. My Yetzer Hara is a Metzias. So Alter Rebbe explains that the Yetzer Hara has a power of suggestion. That's all he has. He comes to you with ideas. If you don't believe the Yetzer Hara, if you don't buy into the Yetzer Hara, you see that you were fighting with nothing, with a little insect. When you buy into the Yetzer Hara, when you believe the Yetzer Hara becomes gigantic. Why? Because he uses your power. The Yetzer Hara has no power. Yetzer Tov has power. But the Yetzer Hara has the power to convince you. But when he convinces you, the energy that you employ in doing the Aveda or not in doing mitzvahs where you're supposed to is not from the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara has no keach. The keach comes from Yetzer Tov. In other words, the Yetzer Hara can only make proposals. He postures, he bluffs, he tries to make impressions. When you don't believe him, when you don't fall for him, you see you're fighting with nothing. When you do fall for him, you're his power. But the Yetzer Hara itself has no power. This Alter Rebbe explains it, because Alter Rebbe is Chassidus. And Chassidus holds everything is godliness and godliness everything. In other words, if you wanted to say this alternatively, in Kabbalah, there is clearly Kedusha and Klippa. In Kabbalah, there is clearly Toiv and Ra. And just like Kedusha has a Metzias, Klippa has a Metzias. And like the Pasuk says, and it's brought even in Tanya, Zel Yumazeh, there's Kfayachal, Keach and Kedusha, and Lahavdul, an equal amount of Keach and Yumazeh. Okay, it's not exactly equal, Kamuvim V'gam Pashat, but in Kabbalah you speak about a war between good and evil. In Chassidus, you speak about a war between something and a non-thing. It's a very different hashkafa. It's a very different philosophy, with very, very different conclusions, except that it's not at all simple when you live it in your real life. It's not at all simple when you live it in real life. If everything is godliness and godliness is anything, then everybody should go around saying what the Baal Shem Tov used to say, you know, I fear nothing except for God. And I want to explain it to you. I'm going to give you a contrast, okay? I already told you the story with Baal Shem Tov as a child. That he went into the forest and he came across a palace. And it turned out that the palace was Keches of Liyumazeh. And this old man with a long white beard and a big forehead and holy-looking eyes said to the Baal Shem Tov, Yingele zo gozo avayis oretz. Little boy, say that God has forsaken the land. So the Baal Shem Tov was a kid. He screamed out, Yispardu kol peyalei oven. All doers of evil should scatter, should vanish. And in an instant, the palace disappeared, and the people disappeared, and he was in the forest again. In other words, the whole palace was a delusion. It wasn't emes, it was an achizas einayim. And this was Klippa trying to, as they say, nip in the bud, get the Baal Shem Tov before he even became the Baal Shem Tov. And as a child, the Baal Shem Tov was mevatel the Klippa by saying, Yispar da Klippa oven. And it was taka, in his galat, there was no mitzias to the Klippa. Because the Baal Shem Tov's father gave him a tzavah, which the Baal Shem Tov lived with his whole life. And the tzavah said, you know, Eineni yari mishum davar ki me'akadosh baruch hu ba'atzmi. You have it in the Baal Shem Tov's Tatus. I fear nothing except God. Now that, I fear nothing except God, sounds like a good idea. But is it a realistic idea? Am I afraid of cars that are moving at 60 miles an hour? Am I afraid of bandits? Am I afraid of dark, shadowy alleys in the middle of the night where people are violent? Of course I am. But Eineni yari mishum davar ki me'akadosh baruch hu ba'atzmi means I'm not afraid of those things. It's not simple, although it is simple. It's simple because it's so logical and because it's so straightforward. It's not simple because to live it bepayel is a whole other thing. Another story for the Baal Shem Tov, which is truly a remarkable story. It's be'emes apele. Is the Baal Shem Tov was looking for the mafteach for Chassidus. Or a different nusach is, Baal Shem Tov was looking for the mafteach for Mashiach. And he was told, Molmaila, the mafteach for Mashiach, mafteach for Chassidus, is by the Samach Memale. It's found by the devil himself, by the Satan himself, by the Yetzer Hara himself, by the Malach HaMavis himself. So the Baal Shem Tov did what he needed to do, and he brought the Samach Mem down onto the physical earth in the embodiment of a big black dog that stood outside the window of the Baal Shem Tov and raised itself on its haunches and was pounding on the window and barking. And the Baal Shem Tov said to the Samach Mem, give me the key to Chassidus, give me the key to Mashiach. So the Samach Mem said to the Baal Shem Tov, do Tipos Ruch, do Yelud Isha, you, how dare you bring me into this world? He says, since Sheshes Mei Bereishis, I personally visited the earth only twice. Either the first time was by Cheta Egel, Cheta Eitzadas, and the second time was by Churban Bayis Rishon, or according to a different gifts in the story, by Churban Bayis Rishon and by Churban Bayis Sheni. Everything else that I do through my shluchim, Mishlachas Malach Eroyim, Gida Delei. How are you not afraid to start up with me? The Samach Mem said to the Baal Shem Tov. And the Baal Shem Tov told him what his father said to him as a child, I fear nothing except God himself. And this dog threw up, which means it represented, symbolically, was giving up this key to Chassidus or to Baal Mashiach, and it died. So now I want to ask you a question. Everybody knows the Ma'aseh of Shmuel Munkis, right? The Shmuel Munkis met these two Machashvim, and they did some incantations on a cup of water. But Shmuel Munkis made a shahakal and he drank it. The Alter Rebbe was very upset. You know the story, right? The Alter Rebbe was very upset at Shmuel Munkis. The Alter Rebbe said to Shmuel Munkis, I was busy 3 months fixing what you did with those two Machashvim. And he said to Shmuel Munkis, if I hadn't answered Amen in your bracha, the Arichas is a different time. If I hadn't answered Amen in your bracha, it was to give enough, you'd be finished. And it says, by the way, one of the details of the story, the Friedrich Rebbe told the Rebbe the Ma'aseh, it's in the Rebbe's Rishimis, and he said to him, and that year the Alter Rebbe was arrested. So the Rebbe asks the Friedrich Rebbe, is there a connection between the story and this statement? So the Friedrich Rebbe says, I don't know. Whatever the story was told, the punchline was that was it, the Alter Rebbe was arrested. And when you read the story, you could hear, I don't understand. Apes is taka emes, eined movade. If it's true that Klippa is darkness, Elokus is Alphonse is Elokus, so why was Shmuel Munkis wrong? All Shmuel Munkis did was he told Klippa, you're nothing. He wasn't afraid. He made a shahakal. He showed these two machashim as a hotei and bud. Obviously, the teretz is that the emes taka is, the real truth is, Elokus is Alphonse is Elokus. But the level of emunah a person has to be on, to be megale in Welt as Elokus is Alphonse Elokus, is an incredibly high level. Afilu Shmuel Munkis, who was G'dei Chassidus Morazaken, the Alter Rebbe felt, couldn't simply say to a klipper, I'm not afraid of you because you're not the Eibishter. So the point is, Chassidus teaches an ideal truth. And the ideal truth is there's nothing but God. Eined Movade. Finished. Or the words of the Friedrich Rebbe again, godliness is everything and everything is godliness. Now life is about implementing this. Life is about trying a little bit to live in the Eibishter's world. Now, all of us know we live in the Eibishter's world, but we don't always feel that way. We oftentimes feel like we live in the world of Wall Street, or the world of the United Nations, or the world of President Obama, or the world of Ahmadinejad, Yimach Shmei. We live in the Eibishter's world. And the job of a chassid, to the course of his life, is to bring himself a little closer to this idea that La Hashem ha'aratim, this is the Eibishter's world. The real, absolute truth of Chassidus is Eined Movade. You know, the Rebbe told the story many times by Fabrengen. The story apparently happened more than once. It was once a very, very big chassid, and I saw about that Mahariel also, who was a big businessman. And he was making cheshbonis, he was doing his business accounts. Sach hakel, he finished the conclusion, the bottom of the page. Sach hakel, Eined Movade. All the numbers were right. How many trees he harvested, and how far he shipped them, and how much he paid for the shipping, and how much he invested in the employees who shipped it for him, and how much he sold it for, and how much was his profit, and how much he had to give in taxes, and how much he had to pay for the land that he borrowed, how much was profit, and how much he gave to tzedakah. Sach hakel, Eined Movade. It's nicht gestimmt. But when he wrote Eined Movade, he wasn't trying to make an impression. He wasn't trying to make it. Look how Chassidish I am. I did my business accounts and I finished Eined Movade. It was the pshat as it did hert. You know, the Rebbe had told many times. One of the stories the Rebbe loved to tell, and I mistame because we don't even know who this chassid was, but the Rebbe must have told the story 20 times, at least. I mean, I heard it from the Rebbe 5-6 times, maybe more. It was once a Fabrengen during martial law. Okay, during the years that there was a military government. If you were caught violating a rule, they shot you. There was no civilian courts. There was no normal law. Martial law means that everybody in the whole country is under military rule. In the military, you step out of line, they shoot you. And one of the rules of the martial law was that there was a curfew. You had to be in bed, you had to be in your house by a certain time. So the Chassidim had a Fabrengen. Fabrengen went till who knows when. And the Chassidim said L'chaim, and one of the Chassidim was a good mevusim, and he was walking through the streets in the middle of the night, singing a niggin. And a police officer, a military man with a machine gun, stops him and says, K'toy idiot. Who walks? Vergeet. I'll take you entvet, bittel idiot. Bittelgate. And the Rebbe says, and the soldier let him go. So, what's the pshat? The soldier had the head, bittel. You can't shoot bittel, because in bittel there's no flesh and blood, and there's no bullets. There's eined mavadeh. The soldier had no understanding where that person was. But the Rebbe says, from the fact that he was let go, is a raya that when he said bittul idiot, in other words, he wasn't the pshat, he was shikir, he was out of his mind. This is where he was. He was in the place of eined mavadeh. When you're in the place of eined mavadeh, it's taka eined mavadeh. But that's really what lies at the heart of Chassidus. If you wanted to say what I just said in different words, the Baal Shem Tov said there's no such thing as evil. There is only God and masks. And the masks aren't real, unless we believe them. It's a unique shita. It's undoubtedly a different shita. It's a change. It's a modification. It's a revolution, and it changes everything. It changes what tshuva means. It changes what birurim means. It changes what Mashiach means. It changes what Torah mitzvahs means. Either something doesn't exist, or something is real. Either something doesn't exist, or you could show that what it is the Eibishter. This is the sheet of Chassidus. It's very simple. Now here's what's interesting. When you read the Baal Shem Tov's Torah, I don't know how many of you have read the Baal Shem Tov's Torah, but I've looked through the Baal Shem Tov's Sfarim. Why? Because I want to know everything. You can't look through and if to learn. The Baal Shem Tov's Torah sound like Pshetlach. Vertlach. When you read the Baal Shem Tov's Torah, you don't see any depth. The Baal Shem Tov Torah sound like, stories for Bobbis. You see in other words, not only don't you understand, you don't even understand that you don't understand. Because every Torah of Baal Shem Tov tells you the same thing. Every one of them. In different ways. Elokus is out, Nalsa is Elokus, that's it. And when you say Elokus is out, Nalsa Elokus in 101 different ways, that's all you have. It's not very sophisticated. Like, of course, Kolakeyas, the famous Torah that Al Rebbe explained. Kolakeyas, when a person gets angry, it's like idol worship. Why? Why are you angry at Pliny ben Pliny? The Eivishter did it. And the whole Sefer of the Baal Shem Tov has more or less this theme. In a variety of different ways and contexts and aspects. But the bottom line is the Baal Shem Tov revealed a Torah that says everything is godliness. There's no such thing as evil. There's only God. And every one of his Torahs explains a pasuk, a ma'ameh, a story, an idea in that context. And when you read it, you could have said it also. You don't need the Baal Shem Tov to say it. And it doesn't seem very, very realistic and down to earth and so forth. And the reason is because the Baal Shem Tov did not explain himself. He simply said his shita. Then you read the Mizitcha Maggid's Teiros. Mizitcha Maggid's Teiros are the same Teiros as the Baal Shem Tov, but the Mizitcha Maggid takes the Baal Shem Tov's Teiros and cloaks them in a garment of Kabbalah. There's a Lashon in Asichas, a place of reading in Rebbe, that says these words. The Maggid had gedaft Haskalah, and the Alter Rebbe had gedaft Chakira, Avona. The Mizitcha Maggid needed Haskalah, which means Chochmah, and the Alter Rebbe needed Bina, Chakira. In other words, the Mizitcha Maggid took Chassidus and gave it a garment of Kabbalah. Kabbalah we don't know. So when you read the Baal Shem Tov's Torah, it seems like nothing. Read the Mezritch Maggid's Torah, you don't understand it because it's Kabbalah. But you don't realize that the Maggid's Kabbalah is actually making it easier, not harder. Now you understand that you don't understand. Then you come to the Alter Rebbe adds Havana, so now you have to work. But there's a possibility that you'll understand through the Alter Rebbe the Kabbalah of the Maggid, and therefore understand what the Baal Shem Tov is really saying. So this is in a nutshell, in an essence, in a kernel, what the Baal Shem Tov taught. But the Baal Shem Tov taught it about everything. He taught it about people. He taught it about the world. He taught it about Torah. He taught it about mitzvahs. He taught it about tefillah. And what we want to do is we want to break it down. We want to identify individual aspects. In other words, I want to talk about different things separately. How do you apply the principle of Elokus Elokus to people, to Yidden? How do you apply Elokus Elokus to the world, to the creation? How do you apply it to Torah, to Tefillah, to Tzedakah? That's the plan. That's what I want to do. Again, I don't expect to spend 6 weeks on this. I don't want to bore you with philosophy. I'm giving shiurim all week long. But at least a little bit, I must do this. Point number one. Without a doubt, the most important cultural priority of Chassidus. What I mean when I say that is this. The statement that I just made, Alt is Elokus and Elokus is Alt, is Chassidus. But in order for Chassidus to work, Chassidus needs minhagim. In order for Chassidus to work, Chassidus needs what we call Darkei HaChasidim. And Darkei HaChasidus, minhagim, customs, culture, form, that translates the ideals of Chassidus for real people. You know, if I went out in the streets and I screamed, Elokus is Alt and Alt is Elokus, okay, maybe I'll make myself happy, and maybe I'll have myself in jail or in a mental institution, but you don't fix people by telling them, Elokus is Alt, Elokus. You have to give them a way to eat it. And part of that is a Torah, is a philosophy, no question, but there's also a lifestyle, a culture, minhagim. And without a question, the single most basic nekudah in minhagim and darkei HaChasidim is the principle that is called the Emunas Tzadikim. Without a question, beyond any shadow of a doubt, the Baal Shem Tov placed the tzaddik at the forefront, at the helm of Chassidus. But this means a lot of things. One of the things that it means is like it says in Hayom Yom. It's a wonderful Hayom Yom that deserves to be explained. The Hayom Yom says, Chassidus removed the loneliness from the world. Until Chassidus, the Rosh Yeshiva, the Rosh Masifta was alone, and the ordinary citizen was alone, and in Chassidus they found a common ground. The Gadol B'Yisrael is not lonely, the average Jew is not lonely because they can enjoy each other. Now, this is real. Tzadikim only look like us, especially big tzadikim, especially Neshamas Klolius. They are completely different creatures than we are. Completely different. We have no shaykhs to them at all. You know, ktana avos mimasnenu. Their knowing kol hatayra kula is from the little things. We have no concept what it means. Gdei Yisrael amiti, and people who knew Chassidus. Chassidus. I don't mean that they could read an Eitz Chaim. I mean Chassidus. You know, when the Frierdiker Rebbe says Yadua, and Yadua is not written in any book. That kind of greatness. We have nothing in common with them. Chassidus brought together the Baal Shem Tov, the biggest tzaddikim, and the simplest of people, that they could mamish have a relationship which is symbiotic, that means interdependent, like the previous Rebbe says once in a Sikha based on a story. Just like Chassidim need a Rebbe needs Chassidim. And when the Chassidim do what the Rebbe wants, they give the Rebbe koyach. And when Chassidim fail to do what the Rebbe wants, this is a direct lashon from the Rebbe Maharash, macht men dem Rebbe ois Rebbe. The Rebbe stops being a Rebbe. Because this is the design of the relationship between the tzaddik and the chassid, that the tzaddik needs the chassid as much as the chassid needs the tzaddik. Emunas Tzadikim. But of course, as you know, there are two very different philosophies about what Emunas Tzadikim means. There's Emunas Tzadikim by Chassidei Poland, and there's Emunas Tzadikim by Chassidei Chabad. Amongst Chassidei Poland, Emunas Tzadikim meant v'tzadik b'munasa yichya. Al tikre yichya elo yechaya. The tzadik carries the whole load himself, the whole load. Who brings Mashiach? The tzaddik. Who's Mavatal Gezeres? The tzaddik. Who heals sick people? The tzaddik. Who solves people's financial problems or familial problems or anti-Semitic problems? The tzaddik. What does the chassid do? He believes. That's it. I read a book on the bells. The bells that Rebbe never ate, the bells that Rebbe never slept, the bells that Rebbe lived like a malach. For his chassidim, kol tov shabayim. In bells they had yoshvin, zitzes. People used to come to bells and sit for years and learn. The bells that Rebbe made sure they had comfortable beds and nice rooms and tasty food and comfortable chairs, and they didn't make them learn 20 hours a day. The design of the Chassidus demanded of the Chassidim no Mesiras Nefesh. All you got to do is believe and stay connected, and the Rebbe solves your problem. This is the sheet of Chassidei Poland. In Chabad, the job of a Rebbe was not to carry the whole load. And not only was it not the job of the Rebbe to carry the whole load because it's too much of a load. That's not the reason. The job of the Rebbe to carry the whole load is because if the Rebbe carries the whole load, that's not your futza ma'nasecha chutza. You're not bringing Chassidus into the world. You're keeping Chassidus in your pocket. And you're allowing people to only be influenced by Chassidus, but never be permeated with Chassidus, taken over by Chassidus. In Chabad, v'tzadik b'manosa yichi is read kiksavi. Every Jew is a tzaddik. And every Jew has to do his avodah and his shlichus and make kedem b'tachtein and bring Mashiach tzidkenu. But he needs the koiches of the Rebbe. The tzaddik's role is still very central. But the tzaddik's role, which Rebbe what? The tzaddik's role was to teach people how to serve the Eibishter. Chassidim went to the Rebbe, not for the Rebbe to perform miracles for them, not for the Rebbe to solve their problems. Chassidim went to the Rebbe for the Rebbe to teach them how to solve their own problems. And this goes back from the Alter Rebbe. But these are two approaches to the issue of Emunas Tzadikim, both very, very legitimate. One of the most famous Chabad stories. You want to tell a Chabad Skemaisi. Yeah? What is the story you tell? You tell the story with Shmuel Gerari, which either is or isn't true, but it happened. He did say this. The question is only whether he said it because it was true or because he was trying to make a point. Shmuel Gerari was a big businessman, made a lot of money. He gave unbelievable amounts of money to the Rebbe. Shmuel Gerari traveled a lot, and he met all kinds of people. Amongst the people he met was Polish Chassidim. Now, Polish Chassidim, this even I remember from my childhood in Crown Heights, were constantly telling stories. Constantly. Much more than in Chabad. And the stories they told were of a different type. Old Chabad Chassidim didn't tell stories of miracles. It wasn't the priority. Old Chabad Chassidim really told stories about Chassidim. Because they wanted to tell stories about Inyonei Avodah. They wanted to tell stories to which they could relate. So you tell the kind of story which you can have a shaykhis to, about a chassid's Mesiras Nefesh, about a chassid's Avodah. A Rebbe's story is a Rebbe's business. But the Polish told us push it from Nissen. You come to your Rebbe, you have one of those great Polish stories. There's a guy who comes running to his Rebbe and says, Rebbe, the Potter Tzura sich beliebt in mein Tochter. You know the story? The son of the Poritz decided that he likes my daughter. And what am I going to do? If I don't give her to him, he'll destroy me and my whole community. If I do give it to him, my daughter's 11 mit jenem goy. So the Polish Rebbe calls in his wife and asks her, would you agree to take a get from me if I asked you? Would you agree to take a get from me if I asked you? Would you agree to take a divorce if I asked you? So she said yes. Okay. So are you agreeing in principle for a divorce? So say, yeah. Okay. Call in people. We're making a kinyan in anticipation of the get that I'm going to give my wife. I would like to be mishtadach myself with your daughter. I'm going to become the kali chassan of your daughter. They made a kinyan and so forth. He picked up a broom and went bang bang. And wherever the guy was, the guy dropped dead. This is a class, it's a true story. It's a moide de kamaisa. But this is how Chassidim lived. This, when you're around a person who's moise nefesh the Polish Tzadikim were very big, but they carry the whole load. All the Chassidim needed was this connection, you understand? What's the story with Shmuel Gerari? He met a group of Pailisha, and everyone is telling story after story of their Rebbes, with Nisim V'Niflois, and he is quiet. So they turn to him and they say, "No, you have no mises from your Rebbe." He says, "Nope, my Rebbe has no mises. It doesn't do any miracles." So they said to him, "Come on, you got to be able to squeeze one mice. Even the simplest Rebbe has at least one miracle." I remember a story. What's the story? That the Rebbe, he went to the Rebbe to tell him about his business investments. He was planning to go to Western Europe, to a big city, and invest internationally. He says, "No, don't go to Leipzig, to Germany. Go to Vitebsk, which was the capital in the state of Lubavitch, and make your investments on a much, much smaller scale." He says, "I went to Vitebsk, I invested my money, I lost every penny." And they're sitting over there with open mouths. They're thinking that, he lost all of his money, and then all of a sudden money grew out of his backyard. So what's the end of the story? He says, "That's the end of the story." "That's the end of the story?" "Yeah, lost my money." He says, "So what's the miracle of the story?" He says, "The miracle of the story is that I remained a chassid." Now, whether this actually occurred or didn't, but the point, this is how Chabad Chassidim saw the Rebbe. You did not come to the Rebbe for the Rebbe to take over your responsibility. You came for the Rebbe to inspire you and to teach you. But there's no question about it that at the heart of Chassidus lies Emunas Tzadikim. Chassidim are connected to a tzaddik, to a Rebbe. And the connection that Chassidim have to a tzaddik and to a Rebbe connects them to the Eibishter. Like it says in our Sichos, that it's Memutza HaMachaber and so forth and so on. And the tzaddik Hador has moirinik koiches from the Eibishter. And the tzaddik Hador has those koiches to concern himself with Kol Hador Kuloi. And the people in one way or in another way must connect themselves to the tzaddik. Now let me tell you a story. I'm going to finish with this story. I'm telling you the story because this story, I think, summarizes both philosophies of Emunas Tzadikim. In this one story, you see both perspectives. There was a Chassid Chabad by the name of Kushia Lepler. Kushia Lepler was a very Varma Hartzika person. But he was a simple Jew. He obviously lived in Lepler. He was a kremer. He had a retail. He was what they call today in America a small business owner. He had a shop. He sold material. Right? He heard about the Alter Rebbe. So he walked from Lepler to Lozhner. He came to Lozhner in the middle of the night, and he decided that wherever he sees light, this is the Alter Rebbe's house. Because he heard already that if you want to get into the Alter Rebbe, you have to go through, it's worse than today's HMOs. You have to go through one gatekeeper and a second gatekeeper and a third gatekeeper. He didn't want to have to go through all the movements. So he wanted to go to Lozhner, meet the Alter Rebbe face to face. He came in the middle of the night. The Alter Rebbe lived in a 2-story house. The only house in Lozhner with 2 floors was the Alter Rebbe's. And the Alter Rebbe's light was on. So he climbed in and he plopped. Alter Rebbe looks up in Mitternacht and says, "Tayyid Bemen Simen." He just showed up in his room. And before the Alter Rebbe could say anything, he says to the Alter Rebbe, he says, "Rebbe, hak mir up dem linken side. Hak mir up dem linken side. Chop off the left side." He said, "Alter Rebbe verdweket." Alter Rebbe went into Advekes. The Alter Rebbe said, "Benigen, kedarki b'kodesh, ve'ato mechayes kulam," which means the Eibishter gives life to everybody. Shaina mecharayim. Inspire him also. And in that moment, you can see Lepler became in a madrega of tzaddik. Ava v'yireh. That's what a tzaddik is. Ava v'yireh. He was in love with Eibishter. And he became, Poshet, a big chassid. Like it says in the Hayem, I'm sure you know, that by Kushia Lepler, there's kommen Zeiten, als verdaven and Shachris, Mincha, Meid of Einen noch and Zweiten, so the Shvenke Zeit zum Mafstek sein. He davened, Shachris, and then there was time for Mincha, and then for Meid, no time to stop. He became a Geheibner Yid. He became a Yid with Avas Hashem, a Tzaddik. But, 2 things. Number 1, he wasn't always in that Madrege. Because he did nothing to earn it. He came to the Alter Rebbe. Alter Rebbe gave him a freebie. Alter Rebbe gave him a prize. An upper. So the Tzaddik would come and the Tzaddik would go. There would be months where he'd be davening all day long. And then there'd be months where he was just like a regular shopkeeper. And he used to say, Tzaddik Preshal, Tzaddik Ushal, which means the Tzaddik came and the Tzaddik left. He would say it about himself. Because his whole madrege was a matana from the Mountain Rebbe. Chassidim did not respect Kushia Lepler. They didn't have their chedz for him. because this was Hepech Chabad. What the Alter Rebbe did for him was out of character. B'chlal, the Alter Rebbe gemont avoida. It's taka true that you have to have a tzaddik, but you go to the tzaddik not to have your problems solved. You go to the tzaddik to be taught how to solve your own problems. So he was a Goy ben Arid, and Chassidim didn't think the highest of Rebbe Kusila. The Alter Rebbe was nostalgic, and the Mittler Rebbe became Rebbe. And the Mittler Rebbe had a seder that younger light used to come to Lubavitch to hear Chassidus, and you could stay for weeks and months as much as you wanted. But there was a t'nai that when you went home, you had to stop in every city along the way and a Chazer Amayim. Mittler Rebbe gekocht in Chassidus. So one of these younger light, a kid who was 18 or 19 years old, probably a good head, but he was very young, passed through Lepler, and it was announced he's coming from the Rebbe, and he has a shlichus from the Rebbe to Chazer Amayim. So naturally, it was a big deal. All the Chassidim got together, even with the Chassidim and Grace Weissebor. They took this younger man, they put him maybe on, but him gave him covered malachim. The Rebbe's a shliach, and he Chazer Amayim. 2-3 hours. By the Alter Rebbe, the longest Maimorim were half an hour, 40 minutes. Hours and hours and hours. And you could see, as this younger man was chazing the Maimed, that first of all he understood it, and second of all he pushed it, enjoyed it. He had nama geschmack. Kusha Leper listened and didn't understand a word. Kusha Leper had been going to the Alter Rebbe by this point, 15 to 20 years, and by the Alter Rebbe he understood. Because the Alter Rebbe's Chassidus was simple, akashim et ateretz. Now all of a sudden there's this mysticism with this philosophy. He's lost. So he runs over to this younger man, and he says to him, "You can't leave. I didn't understand the Maimon, you have to say it to me again." He kept the guy in Lepla a week. The guy must said the Maimon 20 times. Morning, after, breakfast, lunch, and supper. And each time you're talking 2-3 hours. And Kushi would sit and listen and concentrate, and the Maimon would not go into his head. A kid said he was so broken that he left home and he went to Lubavitch. He says to his wife, "I'm coming back, I don't know when." And he went to the Mittler Rebbe, and he complained. He says, "I'm going to your father for 20 years, and by your father understood the Chassidus. Kommt again a younger manchik, and it's so obvious that he understands what he's talking about. It's so obvious that the Geschmack in was sagt, und ich heb mich schon zu wissen, was redt." The lashon that's brought is the Maimon habe ich verstanden, the Bier habe ich nicht verstanden. The question and answers I got, but the whole body of the Maimon, the Haskalah, the Avodah, I just lost it. So the Friedrich makes a comment. Kusha Lepler gehat a kop der Stück Holz. Kusha Lepler did not have enough intelligence to understand Chassidus. He had a brain like a piece of wood. He was a bullet. He was a simple man. He was not intelligent. And he was taken at Shaykhas to understand Chassidus. Now, the Alter Rebbe, plugged him in and charged him up. And the Mittler Rebbe said to him, Ein loch dover eime b'fnei aros. Nothing stands in the way of will. If you want, you'll know. And the Friedrich Rebbe says, why did the Mittler Rebbe tell him Ein loch b'fnei arotzen? Because mitzad his seichel, it was impossible for him ever to understand Chassidus. He would have to will himself. He would have to change his brain to be able to understand Chassidus. And Kushel Lepler went on a warpath. He stayed in Lubavitch, I think, 7 or 8 months, and he made everybody crazy. People, he would ask everybody to repeat the same Maimon over and over. He would listen, and he couldn't understand, and it wouldn't go into his head. He would go out into the forests and force himself to concentrate on ideas of Chassidus for extended periods of time. And after months of laboring like a slave, the fog lifted, the head opened, and he started to understand. The Friedrich Rebbe says, and in Nigle, he didn't understand the din in Kesef Shulchan Aruch. He remained the same simple man he was. But in Chassidus, he became the greatest expert. Tzemach Tzedek once said to the Marash came to his father and asked him, Shalos and Imrei Bina. Imrei Bina is the hardest Chassidus ever written by the Mittler Rebbe. Imrei Bina was written specifically for this Kushya Lepler. So Tzemach Tzedek says to the Marash, Kushya is the Shaila Imrei Bina from Freg Barabi Kasil. Kushya Lepler from Lubavitch. A question Imrei Bina to Kushya Lepler. So the Marash came to the Kushya Lepler, and he says to him, I want to ask you questions on Imrei Bina. So Kushya Lepler says, I am a businessman, and everything has to be with profit. I don't give away my stuff for free. You want me to help you with the Imrei Bina? I want something in return. What do you want? He says, first of all, it's a chazah for me the Maimer of Shabbos. And after you chazah me the Maimer of Shabbos, I'm going to ask you questions. And after you answer my questions, then I'll answer your questions in Imrei Bina. So the Rebbe Marash said the Maimer, And Kushya Lepler asked him questions, and the Menash said most of the questions he asked me I had to go ask the Tzemach Tzedek. So he was running back and forth between the Tzemach Tzedek and Kushya Lepler, and when he finished, he asked Kushya Lepler his questions in Imre Bina, and the Tzemach Tzedek said he wanted that he should come back to him and tell him Kushya's answers. He says, for a whole week I'm running back and forth between the Tate and Kushya Lepler. He calls it the glücklichste Woche in mein Leben, the most fortunate week of my life. He was like this Kushya Lepler had a head like a stone, became the greatest Versteher, the greatest master of Chassidus. This he was respected for. Because this was not Poilin, where the Rebbe does the work for you. This was Chabad. And just one final story, or maybe two final stories, in light of what I'm telling you now, or three final stories. Yeah. In the city, one of the cities in Russia, there were two Chassidus, there was Lubavitch, and there was Kalin, stone. And the Chassidim were at each other's throats. Not chas v'sholom, with violence, but with shita. The Polish felt that they were better. The Chabad felt that they were better. So there was a Polish chassid, a Polish young man, was a stolen chassid, who started learning Chassidus Chabad, and he went over to Chabad. His old friends couldn't take it. He was a traitor, you understand? He went from one movement to another movement. And they harassed him, from Yechepet and Yebadet. And they used to tell him, your Rebbe is a big god, but Moifsim is ba'uns. Our Rebbe performed miracles. And they would harass him about it and bother him about it. And it mamish got to him. He was upset. How come the Lubavitch Rebbeim don't perform miracles? The Polish Rebbeim do perform miracles. Now the Seder in those days was that the Rebbe used to send a letter, the Alter Rebbe used to send a letter to the Mashpia with Heirah for the community. He would tell the people what they needed to avoid it through the Mashpia. The Mashpia would correspond with the Rebbe, with the Alter Rebbe. And he would tell the Alter Rebbe where each of the Younger Light that he was a Mashpia on his holding, and the Alter Rebbe would give Eitz and Adracha weiter. So the Alter Rebbe sent a letter to the Mashpia of this town with instructions to give over to the various different Younger Light that the Mashpia was busy with. And when it came to this younger man, there was a cryptic statement. It said, tell him, I'm thinking about it, about him. Which means in English, for you it should be a sign, and for others you have your miracle. Tell him I'm thinking about him. In other words, Alter Rebbe was margish, his Ibn Lebanish with his old friends who were harassing him about the fact that the Lubavitch Rebbeim don't do miracles. And for him it's a sign. For its friends it's a miracle. Go tell your Polish friends Alter Rebbe has Ruach HaKodesh, and he knew what you're arguing about. But he should know that I'm not doing the miracle for him. For him it's a sign. Chabad doesn't do miracles. For you it's a sign. In other words, you're not getting another one like this. Well, your Polish friends who are harassing, for them it's a moifus. This was Chabad. One of the most Chabad maises of all is the maise with Tracht with Zayngut. The Mechol der Alter. You know who he was? The Mechol der Alter was a Mashpia in Temchepimim. Chol Bliner. Chol Nevler. Had a son who was dying. The doctor said there's no hope for him. Finished. He come to Tzemach Tzedek. The doctors have no medical remedies for him. My son is dying. I need a meifus. So Tzemach Tzedek tells him, Tracht gut wird sein gut. Think good and it'll be good. So Mechol der Alter was a very, very big chassid. Hat getracht gut. He just said, my son is healthy. My son is healthy. And he believed it. And his son was Ma'irech Yom, and his son lived to a ripe old age. He recovered from his illness and was Ma'irech Yom V'Shon. Which is Al-Moedin Dika Maisa. Trachkut V'Zangut. Al-Moedin Dika Maisa. Now what's the pshat in the Maisa Trachkut V'Zangut? What does it mean? And one of the Hezbeidim is, a chassid comes to his Rebbe and says, Rebbe, I need a miracle. And the Rebbe says to the chassid, I am not going to perform a miracle for you. But I'm going to teach you how miracles are performed. Perform it for yourself. How does a Rebbe perform a miracle? Of course we don't know. But without a question, it has to do with connection to the Eibishter. Not chas v'sholom, the Rebbe as a person. The Rebbe as a person is heipach achtos. The Holy Rebbe is so connected to the Eibishter that connection to the Eibishter reveals in Yonim Me'al HaTeva. He says to the chassid, how do I perform a miracle? I believe. You believe, and you perform the miracle for yourself. He says to this chassid, your son is ill. Believe that he's healthy, because lahavaya haratzum leya. Eineid muvadei. Elokus is alt Elokus. You believe it, you see it begolui. And the fact of the matter was that his son recovered, was Marach Yom V'Shanim V'cholu. And one last thing, and then I'll let you go. I was at a Fabrengen, I remember, as a bocher, where the Mendel foot of sat Rabbi Elkan, to sit with those two chassidim together was quite a tziyah, because they were very different personalities. And their Fabrengens was very interesting. It was mostly the interplay, you know. Rabbi El used to talk, and the Mendel used to make fun of him. It was very wonderful. So Rabbi El says to the Mendel, Rabbi Elkan says to the Mendel Futafas, der zähl the meise from the Pan b'machshava. Tell the story of the Pidyon Nefesh in thought. Now, the Pan b'machshava story is famous. It's a famous story. But I heard this from a Mendel myself. I heard him tell the story by this Fabrengen. What was the story? The story was, as a Mendel told the story, was he was arrested because he was involved in helping the Chassidim leave Russia. And they put him on death row. I mean, his words were, for dort not narizguna mishis. He was put into a cell where they took him out and they shot him. He says, it was the time of Lag B'Omer. It was 1947, I'm imagining. His wife and his two children had left Russia, had no idea where they were. And he's thinking to himself, in a day or two or three, they're going to shoot me. So I'm going to go to Gan Eden. But who's going to think of my wife and my kids? I have a family. That he has to write to the Rebbe. But how could he write to the Rebbe if the Rebbe is unavailable? He had no paper, he had no ink on it. So what did he do? He sat down and he went and threw in his mind a hachana. In his mind he went to the mikveh. In his mind he did his bonanus. And in his mind he wrote a pan, he didn't have paper. He says, Rebbe, mir geht me schießen, they're going to shoot me, I'm going to Gan Eden. What's going to be my wife and my children? And he visualized himself going into the Friedrich Rebbe in Leningrad, which is how you remember the Friedrich Rebbe, and giving him the pan. Sure. They didn't shoot him. His sentence was changed. He spent 10 years in a slave labor camp. He survived that with Nisim. And in Tafshin Chav Daled, 1964, I think, he left Russia with big miracles, and he came to his family in England. His wife had a stack of letters from the Rebbeim, from the Friedrich from the Rebbe. He's looking through the stack of letters of his wife, and it comes along, across a very funny letter. A letter addressed to him, written a day or two after Lag B'Omer that year, Tafshin Zayin. I think it's Tafshin Zayin. And the letter says to him, Hapan Niskabel, I received your Pidyon Nefesh. Tell your wife and children to move to England. So he comes to his wife and says to his wife, what's this? She says, I don't know. One day out of the blue, a letter comes to you, to our address. And it says, move to England, so he moved to England. So the Mendel tells us the story, that he was going to be shot. And he sat down, it was Bein and Gishrim Mapan b'machshava. The Friedrich Rebbe answered him and sent a letter to his wife. So I remember Rabbi Yel's Pilas. Rabbi Yel said, this is a chassid's moifus. What's beautiful in this story? That the Rebbe was margish his machshava and answered his pan. That's what the Rebbe does. The beauty of the story is that the chassid connected to the Rebbe. It's Chabad's kemaise, because it takes the focus off the chassid, of the Rebbe.